Gamera, Guardian of the Universe, has not had the most successful decade, but here on What If Kaiju, we treat this beloved defender with the respect he deserves. In this What If series, we place him within the financially successful MonsterVerse to see how he'd evolve and interact with other titans. With this being the fifth and final part, I'd highly recommend checking out the first 4 parts, linked in the What If playlist below. But for those acquainted, let's return to a devastated Hong Kong. King Ghidorah is no more. Mechagodzilla is on the run. But most pressing of all is the change of status quo brought about by Godzilla's death and following resurrection. Prior to Godzilla's departure to hunt down Mechagodzilla, the nuclear Leviathan would make something clear. See, while Gamera is stubborn and insubordinate and a pain in the king's side, he can't deny what the terrapin did. Thus, begrudgingly, the shackles over Gamera are essentially lifted. No longer is he just allowed to go after gals, but he'll be able to bring balance when needed. A knight still under Godzilla's reign, but one able to intercede during times of crisis without earning his king's wrath. All of this shared with a huff and a glare between the two opposing titans. So Godzilla departs, as does the original Mothra. But this doesn't mean Gamera or Kong can rest easy, as they're in a bit of a time crunch. King Ghidorah's alpha call stirred every titan, ordering them to destroy humanity. Godzilla's death would also have thrown gasoline on this fire, igniting the desires of a black devil, Camazotz. Now technically I did mess up on this timeline, mainly with the fact that if there was no storm on the island, greater amount of research should have been able to been done on Skull Island, allowing the expedition to be set forth in this alternate 2021. But in this timeline, because maybe Camazotz was detected or some other factor, the seal on Skull Island was never popped. Problem is, with Kong gone, Camazotz smashes into the barrier and beats it like a drum, a war beat forwarding the devil's arrival on Skull Island. Kong can't hope to reach his home in time. Instead, Gamera, even battered and low on power, rockets towards Skull Island. Day turns to night. Camazotz arises. Gamera flies the few thousand-mile distance just in time, arriving to restore balance from the mammalian usurper and his minions. Gamera versus Camazotz. Who wins? Well, honestly, it's not that close of a fight. Is Gamera still wounded from Mechagodzilla and King Ghidorah? Oh, absolutely. But the thing is, his super regeneration should be able to mitigate those injuries in the few hours between those fights and this one. Couple that with Gamera's ability to absorb mana, which should also mitigate any lack of power he might be suffering from. What it ultimately means is that the Knight of the MonsterVerse isn't entering this battle with that great of a disadvantage. Camazotz, by contrast, even if we assume he could fly around Mach 1, would be fighting a monster that's almost 3 times as fast as himself. Not only that, but fighting a titan whose biggest rival is the Gauss, hyper-agile flying wyverns that are even faster than him. An overwhelming experience edge Gamera would thus have. Searing plasma ends the devil's incursion. Camazotz's life silenced by Gamera's explosive fury. Peace would ultimately return to Skull Island, and you can add it to another batch of lives Gamera has saved in this timeline. But what of Mechagodzilla, you might be asking? What is the Revenant of Ghidorah's spirit ultimately doing around the world? The Battle of Hong Kong would have taken a toll on the mechanical killer. Energy drained, repairs desperately needed. Now for the latter, Mechagodzilla does have drones, which should be able to help if it can find the parts. So to Apex's Seattle branch, the robot descends, raiding the city and plundering the resources it needs to repair and modify its battered body. You might be asking why modify, and well, King Ghidorah's spirit wouldn't exactly find its current design all that appealing. Mechagodzilla was designed, after all, by Walter Simmons attempting to create his own superior version of Godzilla. A vision the ghost of Ghidorah within the machine was not consulted about. But when Mechagodzilla senses his biological doppelganger approaching Seattle, Mechagodzilla immediately vanishes once more, much to Godzilla's frustration. Ultimately, this chase would turn into a cat and mouse between the two titans, with Mechagodzilla scavenging the coastline and Godzilla hot in pursuit. But even with all the repairs, there's a crippling flaw Mechagodzilla has to deal with. That is power. See, the machine can't fight, not without an influx of power. Now I know what you all may be thinking, we're gonna see an evolved Mechagodzilla, right, as he goes to the Arctic base of Tiamat to absorb energy. And the answer is no. While Tiamat's Arctic lair in Godzilla x Kong is indeed energy rich, Mechagodzilla's design was based on the use of Hollow Earth energy as a stable power source, and at least to our knowledge, the machine has no ability to convert said power, unlike Earth's Alpha. Therefore, Mechagodzilla is left with only one option, which is to go after the source. Arising from the Copper River in Alaska, Mechagodzilla enters the nearby Hollow Earth portal. Its target, the realm's radioactive abundance. Drones scour the land, feeding their overlord Hollow Earth energy, imbuing Mechagodzilla with greater reserves and modifications to handle said power. Though Ghidorah's mind needs more. Detecting a surplus of power beneath the Hollow Earth, Mechagodzilla carves through rock and crystal to reach a chamber sealed off by Godzilla long ago. Cut to Gia. It's been about a month since the world-ending battle in Hong Kong, and while she is enjoying the calm brought about by Gamera's destruction of Camazotz, a surge of mental images brings the girl to her knees. Kong, having returned to his island home, can tell something is wrong with his friend and openly voices his frustration. Dr. Andrews requests assistance in the form of Monarch's number 2, Vivian Graham. Being Gamera's human connection and someone familiar with psychic links or at least psychic, maybe feedback, she arrives to help Gia. Would Serizawa join? No, as he is still the head of Monarch and very much handling the chaos brought about by Hong Kong, and Godzilla's sudden beeline toward the Arctic. That tangent noted, Graham, thanks to her connection to Gamera, is able to explain why Gia is having these psychic flashes. The Hollow Earth Iwi are calling for help. Mechagodzilla's in the Hollow Earth, and it just went somewhere which should have remained sealed. What's within, not even Graham knows. Remember, Gamera's role was restricted to killing Gauss. The Scar King War would have been Godzilla's problem, albeit a smaller one compared to the original timeline. A problem the Knight of the MonsterVerse, though, now has to deal with. So ultimately, a new expedition is put together, with Vivian Graham, Dave Lind, Gia, Dr. Andrews, and Dr. Nathan Lind. The group venture into the Hollow Earth, their destination the hidden Iwi village, to ultimately come to grips with what's been unleashed. With the knowledge of where the temple is, the group shouldn't find it hard to locate the Iwi. Uncomfortable greetings are made, hieroglyphics are revealed, and the threats Godzilla sealed all those years ago are fully uncovered. The Scar King and Shimo. To defeat these ancient enemies before they reach the surface, the expedition brought Kong. I mean, the Great Ape is necessary for them to even travel to the Hollow Earth, so his inclusion was by necessity. Kong, though, would quickly depart from the group to prepare for the coming battle. Seeking to even the odds against the Scar King and Shimo, the Protector travels to the temple of his precursors and procures another shield made of a prototype Gamera shell. And beneath this new bulwark, Kong also finds another set of weapons to wield in time. Ready for whatever terror has been stirred beneath the Hollow Earth, as he wouldn't yet be clued into what's going on, at least not yet, Kong leaves the place of his ancestors, merely to run into Gamera. The two running into each other is not a coincidence. While in his own timeline, Heisei Gamera was a guardian prone to recklessly attacking whatever enemy, lay in his sights, in this scenario, he very much knows he has allies to call upon, Kong being one of them. So jumping atop the terrapin shell, Kong and Gamera soar toward a fissure where frost now forms. Now, if I were you, I'd probably be asking, what is Godzilla ultimately doing right now? And the answer is evolving. See, after Mechagodzilla abandoned the Earth's surface, the Alpha's animosity toward the Hollow Earth and limited radioactive reserves finally pushed Godzilla past his breaking point. A massive recharge of power was needed, and only one place on the planet packed that kind of energy: Tiamat's Arctic lair. Well, technically that is a bit of a lie, as Tiamat wouldn't be in the Arctic lair, but more so in the Dominion one. The thing is, Godzilla never needed a recharge after first fighting Ghidorah in 2019, so it's doubtful he would have, pushed her outside of that territory. So ultimately, a supercharged Scylla or maybe an Abzu lurks in those Arctic waters. Between Scylla and the Abzu, I'm going to go with Abzu, mainly because the starfish's goo or genetic makeup allowed Tiamat to transform between Dominion and GXK. Don't get me wrong, Tiamat's own DNA is still an essential piece of the evolved Godzilla puzzle, so what you'd get in this scenario is a semi-evolved Godzilla. Imagine Dougherty's design with a few touches and a pink and atomic ray for a general idea of what this Godzilla would ultimately look like. He's not as strong, but he definitely is a boost from where he was. Anyway, as Shimo nears the surface, Godzilla bellows a call heard around the world. ready to combat his ancient rivals. Back in the Hollow Earth, the war party arises from the depths. Gamera belches plasma, sending apes fleeing for cover as the Guardian tries not to kill them on account of Kong. Yet a proton scream quickly ends the terrapin's fiery assault. Kong looks on in horror at what leads the party. It's not the Scar King, but a machine now rebuilt to match the spirit within, a metallic hybrid of Godzilla and King Ghidorah. Mecha-Ghidora. Sporting 2 draconic heads and a central Godzilla head, twin tails, and enough malice to make even Godzilla shudder, this hybrid of Ghidorah and Mechagodzilla accidentally happened upon the Scar King and a troop of soldiers while they were out scouting. Let's just say things did not end well for the tyrant. So when Mechagodzilla reached the dead king's lair, what lay before the machine was not a power source to siphon, but an army to claim the vengeance it so desired. An alpha call forced Shimo to the robot's side through fear like the other apes, and now the army stands ready to tear into Gamera and Kong. Well, that army and a few of the Scar King's pets. As I mentioned in previous parts, the Gauss are very much a thing in the MonsterVerse in this scenario, and the Scar King, ever the crafty and malicious tyrant, would have seen the potential of such ravenous creatures. Thus, after a few millennia, the tyrant bred his own kind of Gauss. These are not hyper-efficient killers, but ravenous, bulky beasts, without wings, ready to tear into whatever their leader points at. At this point, it would be clear that they are outmatched, so Kong and Gamera ultimately retreat. Don't get me wrong, Gamera's all in for a suicidal charge, but Kong, wanting to display a bit more reason, immediately grunts his protest when the terrapin begins to approach the army, and the pair retreat back to the Hollow Earth Iwi temple. Traps are laid, Mothra is summoned by Gia and soars to get Godzilla, while Kong and Gamera ready themselves behind the temple's silk barrier, so when the army finally reaches the biological wall, as Mecha-Ghidora would detect the Hollow Earth portal within, the pair use the element of surprise to attack. Traps are sprung, fireballs are launched. Kong and Gamera go on the offensive, tying down as much of the mech's army as they can to buy Mothra time. As big as these Gauss are, a lifetime of bashing reptiles allows Kong to smash his way through, or cut with the other weapon the Kongs would have come up with in the ancient Gauss War, small blades made of Gamera's tusks and elbow claws. On the flip side, only Mechagodzilla and Shimo can withstand Gamera's plasma, meaning the rest of the army finds itself dropped into the terrapin's frying pan. Apes fall, Gauss drop dead, yet it's with Shimo's frostbite breath the battle decisively turns. Fires are snuffed out by frost before Gamera is struck by Shimo's icy fury. Thick sheets of ice encase Gamera, and with the numbers turning against him, Kong tactically falls back. Mechagodzilla orders the army to advance, merely for gravity to turn off, the Iwi's final trap. Into the heavens the troop ascends, with Kong doing everything he can to hold them off. At this point, there is nothing else to stop the army. No further traps, no further reinforcements. All that lay behind the protector is Gia and the Iwi, lives Kong will never stop fighting for. But defiance and Kong's tools of war can only last so long, especially against such a horror. Mechagodzilla, thanks to his spine rockets, is surprisingly well suited to maneuver through a gravityless Hollow Earth like Evolved Godzilla, and the mech would take the opportunity to violently bring Kong back down to the ground. Kong lays still, Gamera remains frozen, yet before Mechagodzilla can end the protector, a shining meteor crashes down upon the battlefield. Semi-evolved Godzilla surges forth, though he is not alone. Mothra flies by his side along with Rodan, Methuselah, Behemoth, and the Mutos following just behind. For with this new world order set after Godzilla's resurrection, the realization would come to the King of the Monsters to allow any and all monsters the ability to fight and protect their world. Methuselah, Mothra, Behemoth are all here fighting for those noble intentions. Rodan less so, he's mostly here for a good time, while the Mutos battle to gain Godzilla's favor so that way they can have a brood in the future. Thus army clashes against army, Mechagodzilla and semi-evolved Godzilla spar, but a close fight, this is not. Even if I didn't take into consideration that semi-evolved Godzilla would be probably a good bit stronger than Supercharged, the real MVP here is the Mutos. Their mere presence would cause serious electronic issues to Mecha-Ghidorah's systems, making any fight with Godzilla incredibly one-sided, regardless of his upgrades. It also means Mothra would definitely need to save the Heave once it loses power, as I can see Dave Lind, being the more brash of the brothers, wanting to join the fray. Though once the mech is no more and suffers from semi-evolved Godzilla's wrath, Shimo and the army would quickly surrender, allowing Godzilla to claim victory. Shimo would probably go to the surface, becoming another Protector-class Titan under Godzilla's rule. Kong remains on Skull Island, a guardian of the island's EV population who occasionally ventures forth to the Hollow Earth to see his kin when he can, while Gamera, once thawed of his icy tomb, continues on as a protector, a knight of the MonsterVerse. Because if Gamera existed in the MonsterVerse, while he wouldn't be the solution to every problem, and his existence would cause a bit of chaos thanks in part to the Gauss thread, what you have is a being who'd ultimately save tens if not thousands of lives by his mere existence. Lives like the Fords, the Mutos, the Russells, the Lin family, and millions more well into the future. A guardian the MonsterVerse would ultimately be thankful to have. And that concludes this What If, ultimately ending another universe until Supernova decides to force me to make another part as an extension to this. Next up on the docket though is what if Zilla was in the MonsterVerse? But if you haven't already, remember to like and subscribe. I'm GrayShot151 and I'll catch you all next time. Until then, later. Behemoth Methuselah, and the Mutos following just behind.